I think I should have suspected something was wrong back when my wife first came home from work at an art gallery and talked excitedly about a new client. But when you completely trust a person who, in 17 years of marriage, has never given cause for concern, your first desire is to give him a little freedom. My first wish turned out to be a mistake, a very big mistake. My name is Bobby Sprague. My wife's name is Tracy. We met at a small university in the Midwest 18 years ago, started dating, and got married 16 years ago. We have a daughter who is 14 years old and a son who is 12. I work as a programmer in a government agency. I make good money, but not that much. My salary was enough for Tracy to be a housewife while the children were small. But 2 years ago, she decided the children were old enough for her to start working and took a 30-hour-a-week job at a prestigious art gallery in the city. She studied art in college, so the job was intellectually challenging for her. She could speak the language of art and was well versed in it. The gallery primarily catered to clients who were in a better financial position than us. We live in a large city in the Midwest, and there were enough people here with the income for the gallery to thrive. And as a bonus of her job, Tracy could interact with these people and immerse herself in their world for a while before returning home to her boring life. Sometimes we both managed to get into this world when Tracy was working at large gallery events, and I could accompany her as her plus one. I admit, it was exciting to spend a few hours among influential people. Computer geeks like me rarely meet CEOs, politicians, lawyers, and bank presidents. So every now and then Tracy would return home excited after meeting some celebrity or important person. The kids and I marveled at how she would just float around the house for a while and then try to stay out of her sight as she realized her place in life again. Depression was not Tracy's best character. The kids usually ran off to their rooms, leaving me alone with her sarcastic comments about our lives for the rest of the evening. Most of the time, I tried to take it calmly. When things got hard for me, I would tinker with my car in the garage. So, for the past few weeks, Tracy has been talking nonstop about some successful real estate agent who recently became a client of the gallery. Jackson Aloysius Fairchild, a 28-year-old millionaire, had recently moved into a luxurious new home and wanted to decorate the walls with art that reflected his status, Tracy said. She was generally impressed with him, although she noted that he seemed to have a very high opinion of himself. In various conversations, she mentioned that he was handsome and well-built, and often talked about how he engaged in various physical activities such as cycling and rock climbing. Tracy admiring a new client wasn't out of line, so I didn't think much about it and let her talk about it for the next 2 weeks. Then everything went quiet, as I expected, and I didn't hear another word about Jackson Aloysius Fairchild until I was introduced to him at the gallery's Christmas gala just a few weeks before the holiday. I admit he made an impression. About 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighed about 190 pounds, and looked rock solid in his expensive Armani suit. He was blonde with blue eyes and incredibly handsome, even from my cynical eyes. I didn't expect this. I only spoke to him for about 30 seconds while Tracy introduced us, and during that time I noticed how he looked my wife up and down appreciatively, like a tiger looking at its prey. Yes, she looked stunning that evening in a blue skirt and jacket suit, with a hint of cleavage peeking out from her white blouse, but his gaze was more lustful than admiring. Tracy seemed too busy with what was going on to notice, but I did. Tracy went to chat with the guests, and I headed to the bar. I ordered a glass of Jack Daniels on the rocks and found Kenny Taylor, the husband of one of my wife's co-workers, whom I had already met and got along well with. We talked a lot about sports and cars. I chatted with Kenny for a while and then decided to chat with the other guests. An hour later, I noticed Tracy talking in a small group of people with Jackson Aloysius Fairchild literally hanging on her. I walked up to the bar, grabbed her usual drink, a Riesling, and walked up to the group. I introduced myself, then handed Tracy a glass of wine. Then I quietly removed Jackson's hand from where he was hugging Tracy. He didn't say a word, just grinned as he returned the hand to himself. I chatted with the group for a few minutes, then Tracy moved on and I headed in the other direction after making sure Jackson wasn't following her. I expected to see Tracy minding her own business while I moved around the gallery chatting with her colleagues, but after an hour, I didn't see her anywhere. After making another circle, I noticed that Jackson was nowhere to be seen. My gut feeling was that something was wrong, so I started looking for Tracy. I didn't find her in the gallery, so I went outside and started walking around the building. There were small groups of people wearing coats around the gallery who appeared to be getting ready to leave, but there was still no sign of Tracy. And then I noticed a couple sitting comfortably in a black Jaguar XJ. The car started. The couple was sitting together in the back seat. I didn't bother to find out if it was Tracy and Jackson. I just assumed and walked up to the car and opened the door next to the woman. The passengers jumped back in fear, so I only had time to understand that if they weren't kissing, they were close to it. "It's time to go, honey." "Now," I said, trying to sound polite but insistent. We were just listening to the sound," Tracy stammered as Jackson smirked at me. "I don't care. It's time to leave," I said, raising my voice just above a whisper. "Really, Bobby, you need to listen to this sound system," Jackson said. "She's just crystal clear." The stereo was on and some concert music was playing, but I don't think either of them was listening to music. "Another time, Jackson. It's really time for us to leave," I said in as neutral a tone as possible. I got my wife out of the car and we headed to where my Ford F-150 was parked. "Wait, I can't leave now. The party will last another 2 hours. I have to stay until the end and be one of the hostesses," Tracy said with some anxiety in her voice. "If your boss has a problem with this, he can call me directly," I replied. "What the hell do you think you were doing?" We actually listened to the sound system of his car. "She's amazing," she said with a hint of admiration in her voice. "Yeah," I replied, without expressing any admiration. Tracy continued to feign innocence, but things were cold between us for the next couple of weeks. However, I gradually softened and everything returned to our custom existence, so I was completely taken aback when, a few months later, Tracy announced that she had accepted Jackson's invitation to a weekend at his lake cottage for the 4th of July holiday. We were supposed to go Friday afternoon and stay until Sunday afternoon, and Jackson was going to grill both days, have a full bar, swimming, boating, and other activities. I started to protest, but Tracy simply said we were going and left me. In fact, the weekend started off great. We spent several hours on the lake on Jackson's large sailboat. All the women looked great in their bikinis, and the men looked good in their shorts too. To be fair, Jackson was probably in the best shape of the five of us men, although thankfully he didn't seem to have any particular advantage, and Tracy, despite being the second oldest among the women, was probably the most attractive. Her black bikini showed off her 36C breasts and round butt, but didn't leave too much skin on show like I thought it would. Jackson had an amazing grill in the backyard of his cottage, and even a fully stocked refrigerator with beer, wine, and ice for cocktails. He pulled out a bunch of marinated steaks and started grilling them while everyone sat in chairs near the grill with their choice of drinks. Jackson was a gracious host and still behaved around Tracy, who seemed to be a little further away from him than she had been at Christmas. The evening went well, and we all retired to our bedrooms around midnight, and Jackson, the only bachelor, went to sleep alone in the master bedroom. On Saturday morning, we went to a small town located next to a lake. It was a little tourist trap with a bunch of cute little shops, and most of the women came home with a few purchases. We then ate a sumptuous lunch of sandwiches before the volleyball game began. Libations began after the end of the activity, and in the evening there were sausages and stewed pork on the grill. We enjoyed another great dinner, and after we chatted for a couple of hours, Tracy's boss, Lou, suggested I take a walk around the lake. Considering how much we ate and drank, I thought it would be a great idea to get ready for the next round. It took us about 30 minutes to walk around the lake, and when we returned, the group had moved from the dining table to chairs and lounge chairs. I didn't like it when I saw Tracy sitting in the lounge chair leaning against Jackson. As we approached, Tracy smiled and stood up, but she didn't seem to be in a hurry, although she must have known I wouldn't be happy about it. She never looked me in the face, but she came and sat in the chair next to me for the rest of the evening. I noticed her and Jackson exchanging glances several times when they thought I wasn't looking. Just like last night, the party started to wind down around midnight, but as the other three couples began to head to their bedrooms, Tracy quietly asked me to join her in the kitchen. When we got there, she looked me straight in the eye for the first time all evening and said, "Jackson invited me to sleep in his bed. I agreed to his proposal." I must have passed out or something because I thought Tracy just said she was going to sleep with Jackson in his bed. I looked at her as if she had three eyes, and she realized that I wasn't quite sure if I had heard her correctly. "It has nothing to do with love. It's purely about sex, Bobby," she began. "I have been faithful to you for 17 years. You are the only man I love. But I want to sleep with Jackson. He turns me on, and I want to feel what it's like to be with another man. After this night, I will again become your absolutely faithful wife for the rest of our days, but I think you owe me one night." I don't know how long I stood there with my jaw hanging open. My wife just told me she's going to sleep with another man because she wants to, and I owe her the night. "Only over my corpse will you go to bed with him," I finally blurted out. "This is not up for debate, Bobby. Take it as it comes. Today I belong to him. Tomorrow, and for the rest of my life, I will be yours. Don't be so sure about it, darling. Remember that every action has consequences." "Damn it, Bobby," she whispered. "Do you have to see everything in black and white? It's just one night, damn it. One night, and that's it. And now you're going to ruin everything. Just one night. We never thought you would be so stubborn. I probably should have just kept quiet and done everything behind your back. But I was afraid that if you found out, we would definitely break up. So I decided that if you know and let me go, it won't be treason." She turned sharply and left. As I walked out of the kitchen and into the living room, I saw Tracy take Jackson's hand and walk into the master bedroom. I think I started to see blurry because of the tears streaming from my eyes. I walked over to the home bar and poured myself a glass of Jack Daniels. It took me about 5 minutes to finish it. My life as I knew it was over. I drank several glasses of Jack Daniels while trying to figure out what to do next. My first instinct was to leave and file for divorce as soon as possible. But the thought of having to leave my children in the care of my wife did not suit me. I didn't see anything good in this either for myself or for them. On the other hand, my wife was now in bed with another man, and I couldn't just accept it. For a moment, I thought about burning the house down and killing us all, but common sense prevailed. Then I think I passed out for a while, because when I looked at the clock again, it was 3 a.m. and the house was quiet. I went to the bedroom that was reserved for Tracy and me. The bed was made because it was empty, as I expected. I lay down straight on the covers and slept restlessly for the next few hours, waking up at 7:30. I took a quick shower in the adjacent bathroom, brushed my teeth, and headed to the kitchen. The other three couples were already up and eating their breakfast of bacon and eggs. Marna, the wife of Tracy's boss, Lou, seemed to be the head cook, and she offered me a plate while the others quietly greeted me. Judging by the way everyone was looking sideways at me, they were well aware of what had happened. I felt my cheeks flush and my face become hot from humiliation. "It's okay, Bobby. We've seen this before," Marna said sympathetically, and the others nodded in agreement. "Jackson has already done this 3 or 4 times. When he sees something he likes, he goes for it. That's how it's built. I think he likes humiliation, and women play to it," Lou added. "But I don't think he's doing it for personal reasons. It's just his character." "And what happened to those couples with whom he did this?" I asked. "As far as I know, they are still married. Ultimately, it seems stupid to ruin a long marriage over one night stand when there's really no point in it," Marna said. "Especially when there are children involved," added Joan, one of the other wives. "Are you saying that he specifically targets married women with children so that they can use the children as an excuse for their affair?" I asked in disbelief. "It seems so," interjected Ralph, Joan's husband. "But other than that, he's a really good guy. I've known him since college, and if he's your friend, you've made a friend for life. So I can forgive him for this small flaw, especially if it doesn't harm couples in the long run. For example, I know that Jackson helped his latest lover and her husband get a great deal on an apartment in North Carolina last year, and now whenever Jackson is in the area, he stays with them. "Why don't we continue our breakfast on the terrace?" suggested Marna. Tracy and Jackson joined us on the deck about 30 minutes later, having showered and looking very pleased with themselves. I'll admit, Tracy was beaming with happiness and didn't seem too embarrassed that everyone knew what she'd just been doing. She had a plate of breakfast in her hands, and she immediately walked over to the chaise longue where I was sitting and sat on the edge while I removed my feet. She didn't greet me, just nodded as she sat down, and I saw no point in breaking the silence. "What's everyone's plans for this afternoon?" Jackson asked in the voice of a hospitable host. "I think we need to go home and spend time with the kids, don't you, honey?" I said to Tracy, looking at her back. She hesitated for a second, and I saw her roll her eyes. It was one of those things you learn when you live with someone for a long time. Since she was facing everyone else, everyone saw her roll her eyes, and I had to do my best not to hit her over the head for it. "I was hoping we could stay and go sailing again, dear," she replied indifferently. "No, we definitely have to go back. You finish breakfast and I'll load the car. We leave in 10 minutes, I said, heading inside. I loaded the car in record time. Tracy was just finishing breakfast when I returned to the terrace. I grabbed her wrist, waved goodbye to everyone, and practically dragged Tracy out to the car. I didn't have to look anyone in the eye to know what they were thinking. I knew, because I had already thought about it. Except for the radio playing quietly, we drove in silence for the first 45 minutes, with Tracy mostly looking out the passenger window. I think she was afraid that if she looked straight ahead and I saw her face, there would be a scandal, so she just looked the other way. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "Was it worth it?" I growled quietly at her. She didn't move for a few seconds. Then I saw her take a deep breath. She turned to me. "Yes, yes, it was worth it. It was wonderful," she said with a distant look in her eyes. Not at all the answer I expected. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't count on her telling me the terrible truth. Perhaps I would expect confusion, some truth, a lot of justification, perhaps an apology, but not the whole truth. And I could tell by the look on her face that it was indeed true. 17 years, 2 children, everything we built together. "And it all fell apart in one night?" I asked. She turned to me a little more and looked at me sadly, almost resignedly. "It's up to you, Bobby," she replied. "As I promised, this was a one-time event, and now I will be your faithful wife as before. It was an amazing night, and it's over now. But if you can lose your love for me so quickly and destroy our family, then do what you need to do. But believe me, I will get custody of the children, and I will make sure they know that you are the one who destroyed our family." I was stunned. No apologies, and she was going to blame me for the destruction of our family. Clearly, she and Jackson had planned everything well. I had never seen this side of Tracy before, and I definitely didn't like it. "So may I suggest that this morning's activity with Jackson was a calculated action to achieve the effect of humiliation?" I asked. "Not really. He wanted to enjoy himself one more time before I became my husband's faithful wife again. He is ready to live by my rules." We stopped at a parent's house to pick up the kids. When we got there, it seemed like nothing had changed for Tracy. Although I always got along well with Tracy's parents, Ron and Judy, it was difficult for me to meet them face to face. It seemed like they somehow knew Tracy had cheated on me, and I felt ashamed and humiliated. I wanted to shout to them the truth about their daughter, but I understood that this was not the time or place. Throughout the time spent with Tracy's parents, she seemed smug, as if she was enjoying my discomfort and her situation. I thought this was a completely wrong way to reconcile. Tracy went to bed later than me. She wanted to initiate sex. "It won't work today," I said. "You won't get anything from me today. You'll have to make do with what that bastard gave you last night and this morning." For the first time since Saturday night, Tracy showed weakness. She looked upset and shocked by my refusal of her advances, which was a rarity in all our years together. "But don't you want my body back?" Jackson said it's almost an automatic reaction for men in these situations. Oh, really? So he's not only a real estate genius, but also a sex therapist? Well, then he should have warned you that some men don't take such things as a challenge. For some, this is a complete betrayal, and one should expect vomiting rather than desire. Tracy's eyes widened more than usual. Never in our 17 years together have I spoken to her like that, and never swore at her. I turned back, pretending to fall asleep. I heard her cry quietly. I didn't care. "I have made an appointment with a renowned divorce lawyer next week." The meeting did not go very well, to put it mildly. Marcus Rothstein explained to me twice that my options are limited. Either I must give away half of the property and children, or wait until the children grow up, and then get a divorce, dividing the property in half. We all know parents who live for their children, and then, when the children leave home, the parents realize that they no longer have anything in common and get divorced. This was the scenario the lawyer had laid out for me: be a super parent for the next 6 years, then divorce Tracy once the kids were no longer an issue. At least in my case, I didn't have to worry about Tracy cheating again if she was actually telling the truth about keeping her promise. That's what I did. If the kids were involved in an activity, I was usually the parent in charge and made sure Tracy participated too. Why should I be the only one sitting at a charity event for a philatelic club or helping with a woodworking project for 4-H? We have become those parents that everyone admires and shakes their heads at. On the physical side, I didn't touch Tracy sexually for 6 months until she told me she would start looking outside if I didn't fulfill my marital responsibilities. Because I was on the edge myself, I was able to convince myself that I could have sex with Tracy, the same way she had sex with Jackson, just sex, nothing more. After all, she was still a beautiful woman. It wasn't like I was being forced to have sex with a troll. We had sex. "Where did this come from?" she whispered. "Oh my God, Bobby, will I have to wait another 6 months for this to happen again?" I couldn't give her an answer to this question, so I didn't say anything and hugged her. It seemed like everything was back to what I thought would be our new normal, but every week for 1 month, I hired a private investigator to follow her and make sure she kept her promise to not see Jackson or by anyone else. I spent a lot of money to gain some peace of mind. 6 years later, our youngest child, Terry, left for college at Michigan State University. Melissa was a third-year student in Michigan, so when Terry made his decision, the kids and I had a lot of arguments all summer until they each left for their own university. Since Terry was a freshman, he lived in a dorm on campus, and Tracy and I helped him move in the week before classes started. Neither of us remembered taking as much stuff with us as Terry did. We took him to Michigan State University on Thursday and stayed there most of the weekend, leaving only late on Sunday. Exactly 30 days later, on Tuesday afternoon, I called both children and quietly and calmly told them that I was divorcing their mother because she cheated on me with another man several years ago. They were both devastated. "I thought you guys got along so well together. How could this happen?" Melissa practically screamed into the phone. "I always thought so too, but your mother cheated on me with Jackson Aloysius Fairchild 6 years ago when we were out with other couples for the 4th of July holiday. She told me that she was going to do it so she wouldn't have to do it behind my back, and then she promised that she would remain faithful for the rest of our lives. She didn't consider it cheating, but I did, and I immediately told her that I would not tolerate it. There will be consequences if she does this. But apparently she and Jackson planned this whole thing, and she told me that if I left, not only would I lose half of our property, but I'd lose both of you, and she'd turn you against me. I couldn't bear to lose you too, so I had to suck it up and just endure it until you were both old enough to understand." Terry spoke first. "Damn it," he exclaimed. "Did she explain to you why she needed it? Other than she just wanted to sleep with a man she found attractive. Not really. She just thought I would give in so as not to lose you too, and in that regard, she was right." Is she still cheating, Dad? Melissa asked. As far as I know, no, dear, I replied. I hired a private investigator to follow her 1 week a month from then on, and as far as he can tell, she kept her promise and never cheated again. Then why can't you forgive her, Dad? Terry asked uncertainty. You've been married for 22 years, and she only did this once. One time was more than enough, Terry, I said, trying to control my rising rage. How can you talk about love if she spent the night in another man's bed? Sorry, kids. I have no forgiveness in my heart for her. I stayed with her in order to save the family. I love you. Thank you, Dad. We really appreciate you holding it all together for us, Melissa replied. Does she already know? Asked Terry. She'll find out in a few minutes. She will be served with divorce papers at 4 o'clock at work. Oh, Dad, that's a bad idea, Melissa said. In the presence of her boss and colleagues, she will be depressed and humiliated. Don't do this, Dad. It's too late, honey. Besides, I planned it this way. Her boss and his wife were among those people who were there on the weekend at the dacha when all this happened. I wanted to disappear. So no, I totally want her to feel humiliated. Even though I don't agree with it, Dad, I think I understand it, Melissa replied. I support you, Dad. I'm totally on your side, Terry interjected. My phone rang at 4:07. Yes, I answered. I'm going home, you bastard, and when I get there, I'm going to kill you, Tracy screamed into the phone. I would bet on remorse and tears, just for the future, I replied before ending the call. I was sitting in the family room watching ESPN until I heard the garage door open and Tracy's car drive inside. I turned off the TV and stood up. If she was going to attack me, I wanted to be ready to defend myself. I've never hit a woman before, but I was ready if I had to. As usual, Tracy came in through the back room, looking like she was ready to burst into flames. She marched straight towards me until I turned slightly to the right, so she couldn't kick me with her right leg that was her dominant side. This is an old fighter's trick. I also raised both hands in a defensive position. At that point, Tracy stopped, looked down at me as if she was trying to find a way to hit me, and then collapsed on the couch in tears. I thought we were doing well. I thought we were fine, she muttered. You have never spoken about divorce in all these years. You had a good time, so you assumed that we had a good time, I answered calmly. But I kept my promise to you. I haven't slept with anyone since Jackson on the lake, and I wasn't going to sleep with anyone else. You really kept your promise. But 16 years ago, you made a vow to me that you simply threw in the trash that night. I told you not to do this then, but you were still going and threatened me with taking my children away. I couldn't let you do that. And you made me sign divorce papers right in the gallery, in front of Lou and all my colleagues. Is it possible to be more cruel? She said in a hoarse voice. I believed that Lou's presence completed the circle that you began at the dacha 6 years ago. And as for cruelty, your sex in front of all of us in the house was the most humiliating moment of my life. Of course I wanted revenge. Tracy continued to sob, but I saw a grain of understanding on her face. You told me 6 years ago that it was worth it to sleep with Jackson Aloysius Fairchild. That was great. Do you still think so? But I kept my promise to you. I have been completely faithful to you since then, for more than 6 years, she sobbed. So what about the promises from you? I quickly answered. If your vow was only valid for 16 years, does that mean your promise is valid for half as long, say 8 years? Bobby, I'm really sorry if this one incident gets us divorced, but I told you so. I haven't changed. No, I changed it, I insisted. Just because you told me about it in advance and not secretly behind my back doesn't make it right. We didn't discuss this. You discussed it with him. We didn't agree that you could do this. You and he agreed. And then you broke your vow to me. You regret the divorce it caused, but you don't regret the action. You never regretted your action. I didn't give you a free ticket. We haven't come to any agreement that you can get a free ticket. You just decided that I would accept your stupid decision. You ripped my heart out that weekend, and on the way back home you told me it was my problem, and that I needed to deal with it, or you would take my children away. Is this love in your opinion? Because for me, it's definitely not like that. She just looked at me, stunned. Tracy got herself a good lawyer, and he convinced the judge that we needed to go to couples therapy. In my first session, the therapist, an attractive young woman in her 30s, asked me why I felt I couldn't forgive Tracy for cheating on me only once, especially since she didn't hide it from me or deal with it behind my back. I looked at her as if she had two heads, then asked if she had ever been married, since I did not see any rings on her left hand. My marital status has nothing to do with your answer, Mr. Sprague, she said, more than a little defensively. Wrong answer, I said, getting up to leave. Both women remained sitting still as I left. Later that evening, I received a call from Ron and Judy, Tracy's parents. I loved Tracy's parents very much. My own parents died several years ago, and I became even closer to Ron and Judy after their deaths. They reciprocated my feelings, but I knew that they had to support their daughter. That's what parents do. I haven't spoken to them since Tracy was served with the divorce papers a few weeks ago. Both were on the line, on speakerphone. Judy started the conversation after exchanging pleasantries. "Bobby, why do you have to be so stubborn?" she said. "You know Tracy loves you with all her heart. You know she kept her promise to never cheat again. Why do you have to be so inflexible? What exactly did she tell you about that weekend?" I asked. "Well, honey, she told us that you two talked about her sleeping with some man for one night, and then she promised that she would be faithful to you forever after that. She said she told you instead of secretly doing it behind your back, because she really loves you and doesn't want to lose you." "That's about half the story, Mom. Are you sitting?" "Say what you need to say, Bobby." "We are sitting," her father replied in a stern tone. "We didn't discuss her sleeping with Jackson Aloysius Fairchild. She and Jackson discussed. I was simply informed. I was told I had no choice, it would happen, and if I wanted to object, she would take the children away and turn them against me. I warned her not to do this, but it didn't make any difference. So they had their fun that night, and to be sure, they did it again in the morning while the rest of us sat in the living room. I had never felt so humiliated in my life until I got home and Tracy told me how great the sex was. Does this sound like the act of a loving wife? Does this sound like the act of a man who really cares about his husband? For me, no. "But you stayed with her for another 6 years?" asked her father. "No, I stayed with the kids for another 6 years, and then I even went back to sleeping with your daughter. But love began to die that night and died a little more every day. I will never be able to love her the way I loved before." I heard Judy crying. "Sorry, son, we didn't know the whole story," Ron said. "We should have realized that things were worse if you just decided to leave. Thank you for staying all these years for the children." Tracy and her lawyer did everything they could to drag out the process, and the divorce took about a year. I don't know, maybe Tracy thought I would lose the will to fight and just stay with her. She should have known this wouldn't happen. Although I didn't realize it at the time, my involvement in the children's lives and high level of social activity really maintained my reputation in the community and gave me the opportunity to gain insight into the personal lives of other parents. I met more divorced women in my age group than usual and used those connections to my advantage when my divorce was finally finalized. I went on day trips or visited restaurants and clubs on the weekends and was almost always with an interesting companion. Many of these women were divorced mothers of friends of my children, and others were friends of friends. I think the old saying that if a man seeks, he will find has proven to be true. I started having sex more often and with more partners than before I got married. Life wasn't bad, except for the hole in her heart that Tracy left behind. After the divorce, I moved into a 3-room apartment so that my children could stay with me if they wanted. I knew that they were angry with Tracy after the divorce, but I thought that over time they would calm down and maybe spend time with both me and her until they finally left the house. For their own sake, I hoped that they and Tracy would find a way to make things work, but I wasn't going to be the mediator. Tracy had betrayed all 3 of us, and I wasn't going to smooth her path back into the children's lives. I wasn't surprised that both kids chose to live with me during college breaks, but I was surprised how quickly Tracy's parents came back into my life. I didn't hear much from them during the divorce, understandably, but about 2 months after the divorce was officially finalized, Judy called me and asked me to meet her and Ron for dinner at Maggiano's, a nice Italian restaurant in our city. Considering how well we got along before the divorce, I saw no reason to refuse, and we had a wonderful evening meeting. The evening got off to a tense start as both Ron and Judy apologized for Tracy's behavior and any possible animosity that might have arisen from them supporting her, at least until they knew the whole story, so to speak. I told them that their apology was accepted and that I understood their support for their daughter. Then I suggested changing the subject, and from that point on the evening became much more pleasant, although from time to time memories of what could have been would come up, and they would bring tears. Having Ron and Judy back in my life made me feel more normal, and I think they enjoyed my company as much as I appreciated theirs. We rarely talked about Tracy, except perhaps when we recalled some event from the past. We met about a couple times a month while the kids were at school, and when they returned home, we spent even more time together. Thus, it was only a matter of time before I introduced them to another person in our meetings. About 18 months after my divorce, I started dating a woman named Amy. I had been dating various women for some time, not really looking for Miss Right, when one evening Amy and her friends walked into the restaurant where I was having dinner with the kids. She and three of her friends were seated at a table next to ours, and although I didn't pay too much attention to it, my kids didn't miss the moment. "Dad, do you see these women who just sat down at the table?" Melissa asked in a whisper. "They all look good, and three of them don't have wedding rings." "Damn, Melissa, I don't need help with this," I replied. "She's right, Dad. There's a serious gang there," Terry added. So I looked. The children were right. "Crap. Maybe I really need an assistant," I told Melissa. We finished dinner. I was driving, so I gave the car keys to Melissa and told the kids that I would find a way to get home. I then approached a table of charming ladies who quickly invited me to join them. I sipped a glass of Eagle Rare bourbon while they ate dinner. "You just abandoned your kids to flirt with us. What kind of father are you?" asked a long-haired blonde named Jennifer who was sitting at my 10 o'clock round table. "I'm a father who knows his kids have good taste, so when they noticed that three of you didn't have wedding rings, I had two options. Go home to watch baseball and be ridiculed by my own kids, or come over here. Maybe make a complete idiot of yourself, but at least earn more respect from your children." And they always told me that it was just as easy to fall in love with a beautiful stepmother as with an ugly one. "Wow, this is some kind of trick you have, boy," said a brunette named Rose. "It's not a gimmick, it's just the confidence of a guy with two smart but cheeky kids. With good taste, I must say. So, are you in charge here?" Everyone laughed, even Rose, whom I was making fun of. "And for that, boy, you should be the first to tell your story," she replied with a smile. So I gave four almost strangers a brief version of my life, quickly recounting my 17-year marriage and subsequent divorce. "Not enough, Romeo. If you are such a wonderful guy, how could your wife leave?" asked Angelica, the dark-haired goddess sitting at 8 o'clock. "Three of us here are already divorced, so we want to know ahead of time whether it's even worth spending our time on you." "Straight, I like it," I replied. For the first time since I got divorced 2 years ago, I told my full story, including all the painful parts. Up to this point, the only people who knew the whole truth were Tracy's parents and my divorce lawyer. When I finished my story, there was an awkward silence at the table. I noticed tears in everyone's eyes. To be honest, I had tears in my eyes too. "Well, this is one way to ruin the mood," Carol said, touching my right hand. "Sorry, ladies. I try not to live in the past. Look at it this way. I have two wonderful children, and my in-laws are not bad either." "Your relatives on your wife's side? You're kidding, right?" Angelica exclaimed. "Now you're really stretching my boundaries of trust. No one loves their in-laws more, especially after a divorce. What can I say? I'm special. If you finish dinner, this round of drinks is on me. It's my turn to listen to your stories, I said. We sat there for 3 more rounds until I heard everyone's stories. Jennifer got divorced because her husband was a serial cheater. Angelica and Carol divorced due to irreconcilable differences. And Rose has been married to the best husband in the world for 26 years. She called him the best husband in the world several times, and each time the other three nodded in agreement. This is the person I need to meet. The women told me that they met once a month for a bachelorette party, so my presence was a bit of a rule breaker for Rose. But Rose suggested that if she could bring her husband to the next meeting, then I could come too if I wanted. The other three agreed quickly. Can I bring a companion with me? I asked cheekily. 6 of us met at the same restaurant a month later. I met Sean, Rose's husband, and after that meeting, I thought that he really could be the best husband in the world. We hit it off instantly. We continued to meet for dinner once a month, and I began to treat the 3 single women as good friends. Sometimes we did things together as a foursome. Sometimes I went on a date with one of them. Several dates ended in sex. All 3 women were wonderful in bed. After about a year, Angelica and I became an exclusive couple. I was still on good terms with Jennifer and Carol, but it was clear to everyone that that's what exclusivity meant, although when we all got together, sometimes our conversations could get a little heated, even for me. My children quickly became friends with Angelica. It took my former in-laws a little longer to get used to it. I understood this and did not rush things. A serious girl meant to me that their faint hopes for my reconciliation with Tracy were fading. But I think they started to see in Angelique what I saw, and since Ron and Judy and I had such a strong relationship, I think it was just a matter of time before they started to see her the same way, and I to them. After Angelique had been to in-law meetings about a half-dozen times, Judy pulled me aside from the others and said we needed to talk. She looked as serious as if she was having a heart attack, so I was a little worried that my family peace was about to explode. Bobby, I may not have the right to say this, but I'll say it anyway, she began. How long have you been dating this woman? Don't you think it's time to put a ring on her finger before someone else does it first? I tried to keep a serious expression on my face, but inside I was smiling from ear to ear. When your ex-mother-in-law sees this, well, she's probably right. You're right, Mom. I need to make an offer. I guess I was just a little cautious, I replied. Do it soon, big guy, she said. I took Angelica to Maggiano's for her 47th birthday in about 6 weeks. I told her to get dressed for the event and was captivated by her little black dress. Since Angelica couldn't get pregnant, she had no pregnancies and her body looked like a 35-year-old woman. I know she also spent a lot of time at the gym, so it wasn't just that she didn't have kids. The dress came 5 inches above her knees and was cut low in the front to show off a little of her lovely 36C. All evening, all heads turned in her direction, and I could hardly restrain myself from drooling at dinner. We both ordered cheesecake for dessert, and our waiter returned with a tray containing 2 slices and a bottle of champagne. We didn't order champagne, Angelique whispered to me. We didn't order. I ordered, I whispered back. It's for drinking once I put this ring on your finger. After Judy talked to me, I went to my favorite jeweler and ordered a diamond engagement ring. I think he did a great job. Angelica seemed to think so too, because as soon as she saw him, she immediately began to cry. I'm pretty sure there was a yes in the midst of all the sobbing. We had a simple spring wedding. Terry was my best man. Rose was Angelica's maid of honor. No, I didn't invite Tracy. Although I knew it hurt Ron and Judy, I didn't consider my ex-wife a friend. We only got together for things to do with the children. We were polite to each other when we were together, but unlike some people who can get over their divorce and actually become friends, that didn't happen to me. I couldn't forget the disrespect, and if you don't forget, I don't think you really forgive. My children eventually forgave Tracy, and that was fine with me. She is their mother. But I didn't ask about her, and the kids didn't tell me about her. Same with Ron and Judy. Angelica seemed to get along well with Tracy when we were all together. This suited me because Angelica is an independent person and can choose who to be friends with. We didn't discuss this. Twice after our wedding, we went to Melissa's wedding and then Terry's. I was a very proud father on both occasions and didn't let anything distract me from my kids' big day. A couple of years after they got married, the grandchildren started showing up, and that's when I saw a side of Angelique that I never expected to see. Although both Tracy and I were excited to become grandparents, Grandma Angela was literally overjoyed. Apparently, she had a lot of maternal instincts that needed fulfillment, and her grandchildren helped her with this. She was simply incredible. Tracy eventually remarried, and then she got divorced again, and then she got married for the third time, and she got divorced again. Angelica noted that Tracy, in her opinion, was looking for another version of me, but could not find it. She wanted me to promise her that I would never leave her. I don't need to promise you that, I replied. I made a vow to you. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next